If you knew that certain small attitudes in your daily life could be delaying your soul, would you change today? Maria Simma, a simple woman from Austria, lived this truth in a painful and revealing way. While still alive, she received visits from souls suffering in purgatory. And what they told her was not just a request for prayer, it was a cry of warning for all of us. She didn't witness murders or great scandals. What came to her most often were sins that seem trivial, so common that you, maybe right now, might be committing one without realizing it. And that's why this video exists, because you need to know, you need to wake up. Maria was a peasant, no fame, no power. But she had a spiritual sensitivity that God chose for a very special purpose, to give voice to those souls who, after death, still carried unpaid debts for their faults on earth. In her visions, they begged for help, pleaded for mercy, and revealed what made them suffer the most. And among many revelations, 4 sins came up again and again, marked by pain and sorrow. The first of them, slander and defamation. Yes, the words that come out of your mouth may become the prison of another soul, and yours as well. Maria heard from many souls that they were being purified for the wounds they caused with their tongues. Gossip, judgments, malicious insinuations. All that seems like just small talk or venting may, in reality, be a deadly weapon against someone's spirit. Jesus had already said, "But I tell you that everyone will have to give account on the day of judgment for every empty word they have spoken." Matthew 12:36. And Maria saw the weight of that with her spiritual eyes. A poorly spoken word can destroy a reputation, a friendship, a life. And God sees it all. No word is lost in the void. They come back like eternal echoes, crying for justice or mercy. Jump, second most punished sin. Indifference to the suffering of others. That coldness you feel when walking past someone in pain. That excuse of, "I don't have time, it's not my problem, someone else will help." Maria said that many were in purgatory because they neglected the needy, because they saw the pain and did nothing. The word is clear. "For I was hungry, and you gave me nothing to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink." Matthew 25:42. Charity is not an optional gesture. It is a necessity of the soul. Because when we deny help to someone suffering, we are denying love to God, disguised in the flesh of a brother. And in heaven, this weighs far more than we imagine. How many times have you seen someone in need and stayed silent? How many times have you said God help them and walked away? Perhaps that opportunity was your moment to settle an invisible debt, and it passed. Maria Simma heard the lament of souls who had missed that chance. They wept for having lived only for themselves, closed in their own world, blind to others. And this subtle selfishness, which today seems normal, caused them far more suffering than any punishment on earth. Now, prepare your heart, because the third sin is even more subtle, judging others without knowing their story. It's almost instinctive, isn't it? We see someone and think, lazy, bad person. They don't deserve help, but do. You know what that person has been through. Do you know their pain, traumas, the deserts they have walked through? Maria said that this kind of judgment is like an invisible wound we throw into another's heart and into our own, because every unjust judgment creates a barrier between us and God. Judging is taking the place of the judge, and that is to usurp a divine role. Jesus was judged without guilt by righteous people, by religious leaders, and even so, he forgave. But the souls who judged without love, many of them are in purgatory, suffering because they had no mercy. And finally, the fourth sin Maria Simma heard most from the souls: lack of forgiveness. This is the silent poison that corrodes the soul of the one who dies and the one who stays, holding grudges, feeding hatred, refusing reconciliation. These are not just human weaknesses, they are resistance to God's love. Jesus died forgiving. Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing. Luke 23:34. And yet many of us prefer to carry resentment for years, as if forgiveness were a favor we do for others, when in fact it is a liberation we do for ourselves. Maria saw souls unable to rest because in life they chose hatred over forgiveness. They chose to close their hearts instead of loving, and now they needed prayers, acts of charity, sacrifices offered by others to ease their own torment. These four sins, slander, indifference, judgment, and unforgiveness, are invisible to the world, but visible to God. And more than that, they are frequent. They are everywhere, at home, at work, in church, in our thoughts. They are easy to commit, hard to notice, and even harder to repair. But there is a way out, and Maria Simma showed us the way. In the next part, I will tell you how you can avoid falling into these sins, and even more, how you can help those souls already suffering because they committed them. Now I ask you, have you forgiven the person who hurt you? Or are you still carrying that weight? Stay with me, because what comes next may completely change your view of life and of eternity. How to avoid the sins that keep souls in purgatory. According to Maria Simma, the first step is to recognize the sins, the second is to know how to avoid them, and that begins within. Maria Simma didn't just reveal which sins cause the most suffering in purgatory, she also taught us how to live with more purity and charity here on earth. Because God, in His mercy, does not want us to suffer later. He wants us to learn now. The first antidote to slander and defamation is watchfulness over your tongue. Before speaking, ask yourself, will what I say build or destroy? Will it help or humiliate? Will it bring light or spread darkness? Maria said, many sins began in innocent conversations that quickly turned into judgments. She advised, speak only what is necessary. And if you cannot praise, be silent and pray. It's not easy. In a world where everyone has an opinion, where gossip has become entertainment, silencing the tongue is a true act of holiness. But it's also a liberation. Because when you refuse to judge, accuse, or wound with your words, you become an instrument of peace. And what about the second sin? Indifference toward the needy. Maria was clear, charity saves, not just others. it saves you too, because charity breaks selfishness, tears down walls, and makes heaven touch the earth. She would say, you don't need to be rich to help. A gesture, a glance, a kind word may be exactly what that soul needed. Maybe you think, but I don't have time. And I ask you, what will weigh more at the final judgment? The hours you spent distracted or the minute you denied to? Someone in need? Have you ever seen someone asking for help on the street and looked away to avoid feeling guilty? Ignored a neighbor who needed someone to talk to? Witnessed injustice and thought, it's not my problem? Then know this, it is your problem, because the gospel is clear. Whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. And when it comes to judgment, Maria taught a simple lesson. Do not take God's place. When we judge, we put ourselves on a throne that does not belong to us. It's like trying to snatch the gavel from the eternal judge's hand, and that has a cost. She saw many souls suffering because in life they had carried a constant posture of criticism. People who lived analyzing, condemning, labeling. People who never offered help but always pointed fingers. Maria said, judging is easy, understanding that requires humility. So if you want to avoid that abyss, begin to look at others with compassion. Replace judgment with intercession. Instead of saying, he's a sinner, say, Lord, help him. You don't know the war that person is fighting, but God does. And when he sees that you chose to love instead of accuse, he moves, he rejoices, he transforms. And finally, the greatest challenge, forgiving. Forgiving the one who hurt you, who betrayed you, who made you cry when you needed support the most. Maria said that forgiveness is like a spiritual key. When you forgive, you open doors in heaven. When you refuse, you lock them from the inside and more. Holding on to resentment attracts heaviness to the soul. It's not just about the other person, it's about you. How many illnesses, how many inner voids, how many spiritual torments come from wounds you refuse to let God heal? Maria advised a simple and powerful practice. In the name of Jesus, I forgive person's name for specific offense. Say it out loud, repeat if needed, cry if you must, but release it. Because where there is forgiveness, there is healing, and it doesn't stop there. Maria also taught how to help the souls in purgatory. Maybe you're thinking, but they've already died. Can I really do something? Yes, you can. And not only can you should. Every act of kindness, every charitable deed, every prayer, every mass offered with intention, all of that relieves the suffering of souls trapped in purgatory. Maria said many souls were freed after someone on earth offered a concrete action for them. And the most beautiful part, once freed, those souls never forget. They begin to intercede for you, protect your life, your home, your family. They are grateful. They are faithful. They become like angels you helped lift up. So here's a piece of advice that could change someone's eternity, and maybe your own. Today, choose a concrete act. Forgive someone. Help someone. Avoid gossip. Offer a prayer for a forgotten soul. And say silently, Lord, may this act be in love for the souls suffering most in purgatory. You won't see it with your eyes, but in the spiritual world, lights will be lit, chains will be broken, and entire souls will be set free. Now, I'll tell you what Maria witnessed happening to the souls that were helped. You'll be moved by the signs of gratitude that came from beyond. And perhaps finally understand that death is not the end. When a soul is freed, the spiritual signs. Maria Simma received. Do you believe that heaven responds when someone does good for a soul in purgatory? Maria Simma didn't just believe it, she lived it. Over the years, she came to recognize certain signs that showed when a soul had been freed. And maybe you've already witnessed one of those signs too, without realizing it. Maria said that on many nights, a soul would appear asking for a specific action, a rosary prayed with devotion, a mass offered in their intention, an act of forgiveness given in their name. And then, after that act was fulfilled, silence. The soul would not return, and her room would be filled with a peace she said did not belong to this world. Sometimes she heard a soft whisper of gratitude, like a breeze saying, "Thank you." Other times, a gentle scent of roses would fill the space, even though there were no flowers nearby. And on certain nights, she would simply wake up with tears on her face. Not of sorrow, but from a deep sense that something beautiful had happened. In the invisible, she said, when a soul is freed, the soul who helped is also touched by God. That's why so many saints said that praying for the souls in purgatory is an act of charity doubly blessed, because it transforms the other and transforms you. But there is something even deeper. Maria Simma believed that when we help a soul be freed, that soul begins to accompany us. They become a faithful intercessor, praying for us, watching over our lives, our homes, our families. Many times, Maria experienced moments of unexplained protection. Once, she was almost trampled by a horse and was gently pushed aside even though she was alone. In another instance, she escaped a fire that seemed unavoidable just seconds before. To her, it was clear, the soul I helped yesterday protected me today. These experiences are not to glorify Maria Simma, and she herself never accepted veneration. She would say, "I am only a messenger. The author of all this is God." But her life is a sign that the communion of saints is real, that death does not separate us from love, that there is still something we can do for those who have passed, and that they, out of love, also do for us. Now pause for a moment. Take a deep breath. Look around you. Is there someone close to you, someone who has passed away, who may be waiting for just one prayer from you? Is there a soul, known or unknown, crying silently for help, and God is calling you to respond? You might say, "But I'm so small, so imperfect." And that's true, we all are. But heaven moves through small acts of love. Eternity bends before a soul willing to love. Maria Simma proved that you don't need to be great in the eyes of the world, just sensitive in the eyes of God. You can start now. Pray in Our Father with an open heart. Offer your fast today for someone forgotten. Write down the name of someone who has died and request a mass for them. Or simply say, "Lord, may this day help ease the pain of some soul crying," in silence. Maria Simma believed that the souls in purgatory are waiting for us. And the most beautiful part is, God hears our hearts. even a prayer in tears, even a silent intention, even a hidden gesture. All of it has value before the throne of the Most High. And before we end, I want to extend an invitation to change the way you live and the way you die. What if you began building your heaven right now by forgiving, loving, helping, and interceding? Purgatory is not punishment, it is mercy. It is God saying, you are not ready yet, but I will give you another chance. And today, that chance is in your hands. Don't forget, the words you speak today echo into eternity. The gestures you make today shape your soul for heaven. And the prayers you offer today might be what frees someone who's crying out and open doors for someone to pray for you one day too. If this message touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment with the name of someone you'd like to pray for. Like this video, subscribe to the Sacred Stories Biblic channel and hit the bell icon to keep receiving messages like this. Messages that don't just come from us, but from heaven.